we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty radical idea from the Hebrew Bible. It's this concept that God's holiness isn't just about being good, it's about being totally, completely separate from our physical world. And believe me, this idea has some massive consequences. So let's get into it. So let's start with a big question. What does it actually mean for a God to be holy? I mean, our first thought is probably something about morality, right? Being good, being just. But the texts we're looking at today, they have a very different answer. It's something way more physical, more fundamental than you might expect. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by defining what this God beyond the body even means. Then we'll see how that idea created actual laws and was even used as a kind of theological weapon. From there, we'll look at the huge divide this creates, and it all builds to a really critical question about the nature of God itself. All right, first things first. We have to wrap our heads around this core concept. A God who exists completely, 100% beyond the physical body. This idea of a fundamental separation, well, it's the key that unlocks everything else we're going to talk about. The fancy term for this is divine transcendence, but what it really means is incredibly specific. See, in this view, holiness isn't about being all-powerful or all-knowing. It's about being totally separate from the messiness of being alive. We're talking eating, sleeping, and yeah, especially the less glamorous bodily functions that are just part of our reality. And look, this wasn't just some dusty philosophical debate. It was real. This quote says it all. Holiness was lived, legislated, and spatial. It had real-world rules and real-world consequences. So the question is, what did that actually look like in practice? Well, that brings us right to the laws of holy space. This is where that big abstract idea of transcendence gets really, really concrete. It turns into a whole set of rules, and they're all designed to do one thing: protect the divine presence from us. And this verse from Deuteronomy, it just lays it all out there. The logic is simple, but so powerful. Because the Lord your God walks in your midst, the camp itself has to be holy. It's a direct connection. God's presence demands physical purity, period. You can see the logic spelled out step by step. 1, God is walking around in the camp. 2, that means the camp has to be holy. 3, human waste is considered unholy, an offense to the divine. So 4, you gotta take it outside the camp and bury it. It's a simple, almost architectural rule, but it reveals this profound idea. The divine and human filth just can't occupy the same space. And they took this principle to some pretty remarkable extremes. I mean, it goes way beyond just basic sanitation. Think about this. Priests couldn't even use stairs to go up to the altar. They had to use a ramp. Why? To prevent even the tiniest possibility of accidental bodily exposure in God's presence. Every single detail was obsessed with maintaining that strict separation. Okay, so this idea wasn't just about setting up rules for their own camp. It actually became a kind of theological weapon, a way to attack and dismantle the claims of other gods and even human rulers who claimed to be divine. And the argument was devastatingly simple. On one hand, you have the God of Israel, transcendent beyond any physical needs. But on the other hand, you have these pagan gods or rulers like Pharaoh. And what do? They eat, they sleep, they go to the bathroom, they're bound by biology. And in this worldview, that's the ultimate disqualifier. If you have a body with needs, you're not a god. You're just a creature like the rest of us. The story of Elijah and the priests of Baal is just a perfect and kind of savage example of this. He's taunting them, right? And he suggests maybe their God isn't answering because, he's turned aside, which is a polite way of saying he's in the bathroom. Now, that's more than just a sick burn. It's a theological disqualification. The hidden message is absolutely brutal. Any God that needs a bathroom break is no God at all. And it's the exact same logic used against Pharaoh. Moses makes a point of revealing that this supposed God king has to sneak down to the river every single morning to, By exposing this very human, very biological reality, he completely pulls the rug out from under Pharaoh's claim to be divine. So where does all this lead? What's the takeaway? It all builds to what we can call the Great Divine Divide, an absolute unbridgeable chasm between the Creator and everything in creation. Just look at the contrast here. It's black and white. The Creator doesn't need sleep, doesn't get hungry, never gets tired. But creation, that's us, we're defined by those things. We need sleep, we need food, we get exhausted. So this isn't just a difference in power level, it's a difference in what we fundamentally are. That need for a body is the ultimate dividing line.
And this idea doesn't just apply to God. It even extends to other beings, like angels. In the Tanakh, when angels appeared, they don't need to eat or sleep. Why? Because they aren't trapped in mortal flesh. They belong to that transcendent, divine realm, totally separate from the biological needs that define our world. Okay, everything we've talked about so far has been building to this, our final section. And honestly, this is where it gets really challenging, because this is the point where that whole ironclad logic of divine transcendence slams right into the idea of incarnation, the idea of a God who becomes flesh. And here, the tension is just unavoidable. On one side, you have the God of the Torah, a being of fire and cloud and voice, who commands that anything impure be kept far, far away. But on the other side, you have the concept of an incarnate God, one who experienced, well, diapers, drowsiness, digestion, who was subjected to hunger, thirst, and even bleeding. The text frames it so starkly. One creates flesh, the other one wears it. So if we follow the logic we've been tracing, all of these things, the need for sleep, feeling hungry or thirsty, bleeding when you're hurt, getting tired, these aren't just minor details. They're the absolute, definitive markers of being a creature. They are the signs that say, I am created flesh, which is the polar opposite of the transcendent creator, who is defined by the very absence of all those things. And this final quote just brings the whole argument to a sharp, unavoidable point. How can you reconcile a God who commands that human waste be removed from his presence with the idea that he himself was once a baby who needed his mother to clean him? I mean, the theological problem is just laid completely bare. There's no hiding from it. Which leaves us with one last really provocative question to think about. If holiness, by its very definition, is an absolute distance from mortal flesh, then can the holy ever truly become human? Can it do that without completely contradicting its own nature? It's a powerful question, and it gets to the heart of one of the deepest, most fundamental divides in theological history, something to really chew on.